Thanks so much, Jonathan. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everybody. John Weiss here from Software AG. Very excited to be joining you today. By way of introduction, I'm responsible for the IoT and analytics business here at Software AG, based in Greenville, South Carolina. And yeah, really excited to be here. I've got with me Bob Feiner, Senior Vice President, Dell Technologies. And we're going to really look forward to having a great chat today around, building a culture of great customer experience in, probably putting it lightly, Bob, these uncertain times.
Yes.
But really great to have you with me.
It's good to be here, Jonathan.
Yeah. So just a quick reminder for the audience, please take advantage of the Q&A box as we're talking. We'd love to answer some of your questions, but we need questions to answer. So please fill them in. So Bob, just to jump right into it, when we talk about building the customer experience, uncertain times, one of the things that sticks out to me, really in the changing climate today, it's this notion of working from home, right? For some of us, for me in particular, it's been commonplace for years, probably close to a decade at this point, but it's a pretty new notion for a lot of people, and I don't really see it going away anytime soon. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I mean, I think if you look for example, from Dell Technologies perspective, so we've got 160,000 employees around the world. When all this started, we probably had about 25% of our employees that worked from home prior to this. We moved almost the entire company over a weekend to work from home all around the world, and really doing that without any major impact to our services or sales, et cetera. And then what we also saw was, you can imagine the number of customers that had to do something similar because of what was happening, in their markets or their municipalities. So we saw a huge surge in folks looking for technology to enable a work from home. And I think that's just going to continue. I think this notion of okay, do I have a consumer customer? Do I have a commercial customer? When everybody's working from home, and it'll be a long time, I think, before folks go back into offices, depending on where they are. That's going to change what the field service is. And part of what I own for Dell Technologies are all of our field services folks that go out for our products around the world through our partner network. So we have tens of thousands of people in 160 countries around the world, where we have to send people on site to go fix things, amongst other services that I provide. So that interaction is going to be different from a field services perspective, because this work from home notion is going to be very different. And I don't see it particularly going away for quite a while.
It's a great point you make on field services. For us, it impacts us very differently, right? Being on our side of the house, where, it impacts people like you and me, and probably a lot of the folks on the call with, oh my gosh, I'm getting burnt out in what feels like 20 hours of meetings a day because everybody's home and the calendars are getting filled up. But there's the whole flip side, right? Where we have the consumers and the customers that are also affected by this. And for them, especially, you mentioned field services, for them, it's a really interesting dynamic now, right? Because it seems like folks are pretty apprehensive to let people come on site, come into their, place of business, or of course, place of residence, and, actually come fix something, right? Health concerns and safety and all these kinds of things. What's your take on that? I mean, how do you see technology kind of enabling field service techs to do more?
No, I think I think you're spot on. I think there's a number of things are going to happen, or we're already seeing happen. First and foremost, obviously safety and health of both our customers and our field technicians are the priority. We follow all the WHO and CDC guidelines, depending on where we are in the world, as to what you need to have from a PPE perspective, social distancing, having a workspace, going into somebody's home or office, if you have to, making sure you have enough workspace to do social distancing, that's a new requirement we didn't have in January, right? And what we've told, I think the other thing that we've told all our folks is, look, if you feel it's unsafe from any perspective, whether you're one of our partners or when you're a field force that you get a paycheck from Dell Technologies, you don't go. So that's the primary thing, is that safety and health element obviously has been so elevated over the last several months. Now, I also think what that's doing from a technology perspective is, we've done things like implement a last mile solution for all of our, at the time, consumer customers, who are now probably also commercial customers in a lot of cases, as we just talked about. And now we're putting into that last mile, and that last mile solution is very much similar to an Uber experience, where you see the tech, you see what their experience is, you see what their ratings are. Now we're adding this whole PPE component to it. Are they going to be carrying? Are they going to have PPE? Are they going to have those type of requirements that you may have from a safety and security? That's one element. I think the other thing we're going to continue to see around this notion of technology, I think what a field technician's doing is going to be different. Customers are going to want to limit the amount of time that somebody's on site, even if they have the proper safety and PPE and doing the social distancing. They're going to want to minimize those transactions. So the more you do from a remote, or you give customers choice around whether it's a remote service or a automated engagements, or doing a minimal or low touch. So it might be a situation where it's just doing you traditionally would go on site to the customer environment, you'd work on the system there, a laptop, whatever it may be, and then turn it over to the customer when you're done. It might be one of these situations now, and we've started to do this as well, where it's just a pickup, it's a no-touch pickup. You go to a local depot, you do the work in the local depot or a local office somewhere that's safe, perform all the work, and then bring it back. And I think we're going to see more of that low touch, which is pretty unique for field services, because just what those interactions are going to be and what customers are going to expect. And the technology aspect, whether it's last mile, how the tech's doing the work, how they communicate that's all going to continue to evolve and transform.
That's great. That's good stuff. There was a time not so long ago, Bob, when, the field tech would come out, kind of figure out what's going on. I'll get right back with you when I order the parts, right? Come back with the parts not too long later. And, before you know it, you've got 2-3 touch points where the person had to come back and forth and actually fix something, right? And, real interesting point that you make. It's gotten so evolved from that point to now. It's really more about, can you fix this as quickly as possible, let alone come back more than once, right? Definitely don't come back more than once. Just show up one time and get out of here, right? So,
right. So
really,
what that's going to mean, right, are things like using your data to figure out how you really reduce your repeat dispatches is going to become more and more critical. That's something we're always focused on. We've been very focused on things like analytics and how do we enable all the touch points that we have. I do, just on the field side, I do over 1 million transactions a year where prior to this, I was sending people to a customer engagement. That's a lot of data. And what we're trying to continue to do is reduce the amount of times you have to, so you have the right part, you have the right tech, you know how to solve the problem, it's been diagnosed properly remotely. That's going to become more and more critical around the data and what you do with that data.
Yeah. And, we get into this world now where for most businesses, there's connectivity, right? Generally speaking, a lot of folks are collecting data, just like you mentioned, you are, Dell. But what do you do with it, right? And what is it telling you? And that's, one thing that we do at Software AG, we help people really make informed decisions at the edge, right? Where things are happening to drive actionable insights so we can increase first-time fix rates and things like that. How are you seeing the shift from, let's say, cloud to edge, right?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of things we just talked about, John, which is around that service is going to be that much more critical of how do you, excuse me, minimize that transaction time, but use all the data you have to solve that problem as soon as you can, as quickly as you can, with all the right parts and people, and understanding also what are the things you can do remotely at the edge, or what are the things you can do assisted at the edge. You know, we actually have a program that we use that we've developed with all the, you can imagine, you know, we've got 200 million devices around the world that we support. We ping a lot of data off of those devices when when a customer allows us to do that from a security perspective, et cetera. We do over 1 billion transactions around those devices by getting that data and trying to analyze, okay, your hard drive's about to fail. So why don't we send you a hard drive? And if you need somebody, we'll send somebody with that hard drive. If you feel like you're competent enough to go replace that hard drive, we're just going to send you the part, and then it's a no touch. You don't need to have anybody there. So I think that notion of using that assistive technology and the data around that on the edge is just going to become more and more critical as we see this blurring between consumer and commercial. I mean, those lines are going away because so many people are going to work from home and continue to work from home.
Yeah, great point. And I would imagine at some point, you're talking about real big numbers, Bob, right? Lots and lots of assets, lots of data points coming off. I would imagine at some point it's almost cost prohibitive to do all of this in the cloud too, right? I mean, one thing I see from a financial and from an investment perspective, folks seem to be gravitating back down to the on-prem data processing and at the edge because simply it saves a lot of money from doing a lot of this in the cloud. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, if you look from a Dell Technologies perspective, we actually, obviously, we have our own cloud offering.
Sure.
It looks from the edge to the cloud. I think it really depends on the customer. We want to give customers choice. I think what you do see is more customers migrating to some hybrid or a custom cloud or edge type situation, depending on how much data they have and what they're using that data for and how secure that is. I mean, obviously security is a continuing and growing concern these days. So you've got to make sure wherever that data is hosted, whether it's at the edge or in the cloud or on-prem, what happens with it and how you provide that those type of secure interactions. And I think we've even seen in the current situation, those threats are not going away. They're actually becoming more prevalent. And so I think you've got to be very focused on, okay, what's the customer choice going to be? I do think we see both around the edge and in the cloud, but I also think that what you're going to do with that data becomes even more prevalent, and how you leverage it and utilize it, and what software capabilities you're using to provide those services to your customers.
I guess I'll take this moment also just to remind everybody about the Q&A box. I'd love to hear from the audience. What's your take on the shift from edge to cloud or cloud to edge? Where do you see the market going and some of the business drivers? I'm personally really interested in this one. So, Bob, we're talking about all kinds of trends and just all kinds of things related to kind of business continuity and making sure we can keep people connected in these uncertain times so business remains as normal as possible, right? What's one thing that stands out to me is the need for connectivity now, right? Because we've taken a lot of people out from where they may have had very robust infrastructures, right? Office buildings and places like this, to now folks are kind of on their own with assets out there, right? People aren't there to maintain them. So, how do you see this kind of gap in connectivity, if it exists, potentially impacting field services? And what are some maybe things on the connectivity side that we should be keeping an eye on?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's key. I mean, we saw with some customers, right, they weren't prepared for this shift to work from home and the fact that their businesses now had to move to a different location and they weren't in a central location anymore. They just weren't prepared from the standpoint of, do I have the connectivity? Do I have the VPN security in place? Do I have devices that my team members or employees can utilize and get access to everything they need to do? I even saw this in my personal life, trying to access some services online, and I could tell that those services, they had not gone through that shift, so because they weren't available. So I think connectivity is going to become even more prevalent, and I think what that means from a field services perspective is the technology and the digital transformation that field services needs to go through. You need to invest now, and this could be a time when everybody looks back and says, whoa, I'm not sure I'm going to have that investment capability, but you need to do that now, because we will come out of this. And when we do come out of this, if you don't invest now, someone's going to pass you. And this digitization of field services and leveraging technologies like augmented reality to have that connectivity back into your remote centers, I think you've got to make those type of investments now to enhance your field services, because when we do come out of this, and we will come out of this, then that's going to continue to transform.
Yeah. So I think this is a sobering moment for a lot of businesses, right? There are lots of organizations that, we don't need to connect that thing. We can roll a truck and figure out what's going on with it, right? In many ways, those companies are at a deficit now, right? Because their competitors are potentially remotely connecting and maintaining continuity a little bit better than they can now. So I think we've got just enough time for one more topic. And you know, Bob, I'd love to hear from you on the same thread here. What does the future hold, right? As we kind of power through the changing climate, and field services is evolving, to say the least, right? What does the future hold for us?
So I think the nature of on field services is going to evolve and change. I think it's obviously going to be much more technology enabled. A lot of the things we talked about, whether it's augmented reality, it's the data, it's what a tech actually does. I think it means the skills of our people are going to change, and how we actually educate them and train them. One thing we didn't touch on, I have an education services business, but that's going to change as well. Because people aren't going to want to fly around to go get trained. They're going to want to have to do that on demand or virtually. So I think that's going to change. That means the skills of your people you're going to hire, and we will end up hiring people in the long run once we come out of this, because the demand will pick back up again. That's going to change. So I think all the elements of what it means to be a field services tech and a field services organization, those are all going to transform. And people that thought these things were, they had 5, 6, 7 years to happen, they got 5, 6, 7 months. Right. And so it really is a transformational thing across the industries.
Yeah, certainly an accelerated timeline for many people now, huh?
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, hey, Bob, really appreciate the time today. Thanks for hanging out with me. And to the audience, thank you all for joining. And again, please take advantage of the Q&A box. We'd love to hear from you.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.